strange. Okay. Anyways, let's begin. So, see, it says she's here, but I can't see. Let me just see if I could switch the settings. Oh, because she's still joining, that's why. Okay, got it. Okay, she's there, but she hasn't, I guess she's still like connecting. Okay, so this week's Torah portion is called Toldos, which means generations. And it starts off and it says, these are the generations of Yitzchok, the son of Abraham, of Isaac, the son of Abraham. And Avram holid es Yitzchak. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So it seems rather repetitious because it says these are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham.
Oh God!
And at the same time, it's
this thing off.
let me just mute. Okay. So it says this is rather repetitious, the first verse that we have in this Torah portion, because it says these are the generations of Yitzchak. And how does it describe Yitzchak? Yitzchak is the son of Avram, and then it says Avram gives birth to Yitzchak. So Yitzchak, the son of Avraham, is the same thing as Yitzchak giving birth to is Avram giving birth to Yitzchak. So that's repetitious. If you say that Abram gave birth to Isaac, that's the same thing as Yitzchak is the son of Abraham. So that's our question. Why do we have this repetition? Why do we have to repeat the Torah does not just repeat things. It's very precise. Each word is exact. And if there's extra words, we're supposed to learn something from it. So the Rashi explains, and he says that there were people who did not believe that this was really the son of Abraham. They said for all these years, Avram and Sarah wanted to have children, and they could not have children. And then Sarah was kidnapped by Avimelech. In the previous portion. So they said maybe it's not really Avraham's son. Maybe it's really Avimelech's son. So all the scorners of the generation were saying that Sarah had conceived from Avimelech. Why suddenly now did she have a baby? And what did Hashem do? He shaped the features of Yitzchak's face to look like Avraham. So no one could deny it. Everyone says he looks just like Avraham. He must be his son. And so that's what it says over here, that Avram gave birth. And Yitzchak, the son of Avraham, because that's the proof that Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Rashi tells us that he made him look similar to his father. So he resembled physically, his face resembled and looked similar to his father, Avraham. So we have a question. And the question is this language of what did Hashem do is a little bit strange. It's not like the normal way of the Torah to speak, of Rashi to speak, and to say that what did Hashem do? He shaped. This implies that Hashem miraculously engineered this, and he miraculously made this his face to look similar to his father's. But really, a father and son's physical resemblance is natural. That's a natural thing that many times children look similar to their parents. So why would it require divine intervention. Why would Hashem need to make like this miracle? And what did God do? He had to intervene, he had to get involved, and he had to reform his face to look like his father's. Isn't that natural that a son looks like his father? So it says, the explanation that we give is that a person's physical appearance reflects their psychological and spiritual constitution. So the way a person looks physically is a reflection of what's really going on spiritually, psychologically. And Abraham, his character is kindness and generosity. We spoke about that 2 weeks ago. We said that Abraham was the epitome of kindness. That's what he spent his life doing. He invited guests all the time to his house, and he was there to be kind and to teach other people about Hashem, spiritually enlighten them, and physically provide for them food. And he was there. And he was someone who was pure kindness. And Yitzchok, on the other hand, his son, he personified the attribute of judgment, of restraint. He wasn't going out of his way to help other people. That wasn't his service. That's not what he was into. He was more focusing on his own spirituality, his self. He was a person who didn't reach out to others as much. He was called a pure sacrifice. He kept himself in a more sheltered environment. Both of his parents were religious. And his severity, he was more into personal growth. He was more into refinement of himself. He never left the land of Israel because he was like very spiritual and he was on that mode. And so naturally, their appearances, as we said, the physicals reflection of your spiritual. So naturally, they look different because Avram was more kindness and his countenance reflected his kindness. And Isaac was more restraint and judgment, and his face physically reflected that personality. So their features were different. So that's what it says. God miraculously fashioned Yitzchak's features to resemble his father's, that it should look similar, because naturally they had different characters and therefore their faces look different. So this outer resemblance, when God made their outside look similar to each other, this also implies an inner transformation that took place. Yitzchak's natural restraint was revealed now to be compatible with Avram's generosity. So even though Yitzchok was more restraint and judgment and severity, because his face now was being fashioned more like Abraham's, which was kindness, he had this inner change that was going on. And instead of restricting Avram's openness, the force and strength that needed for judgment was used in the task of giving. So restraint and judgment could be used in all different ways. Restraint and judgment could mean to organize. I'm going to use this hour to do this, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to use that hour to do that. It's making boundaries and judgments. I'm judging. Right now, this is a good time to say this. It's a good thing to say, and I'm judging and saying, but don't say the next thing. Or, I can go to this place, but I can't go to that place. So this was he used it together with Avram's kindness, with his generosity. So Avram's generosity was amplified with Yitzchok's intensity. So he took this intensity, this power to be able to organize and divide and be strong. We're doing this no matter what. But he was able to just amplify the work of Abraham. And only a being that transcends the natural constraints, which would only be Hashem, because everyone else is limited to different things in nature, could possibly combine these opposite inclinations and make it into one human being. So that's why Hashem was needed to be involved, because he took this idea of two opposites, of having severity and kindness, and being able to fuse them together. Now, Hashem did not do this in advance. He could have just made Avram to resemble his future son. Could have naturally just said, I'm going to make Avram look like this, and then Yitzchok is going to look similar to when he's born. And originally, when he made Avram, he could have had in mind Yitzchok, and now he's going to look, but he didn't. He fashioned Yitzchok to resemble Avram. In other words, he made Avram one entity, kindness. Then he made Yitzchok a different entity, severity. And then he said, okay, I'm going to make Yitzchok resemble Avram, which is kindness. So Hashem altered the disposition of severity to conform to kindness. So he took severity and he said, you're going to change, you're going to alter yourself to work together with kindness. So again, he could have done it the opposite. He could have made the kindness, I'm going to create it more in line with severity. But he said, no, instead, I'm going to take the severity and make it more in line with the kindness. So what lesson do we learn from this? Well, this is a lesson for every person, that we have a choice of how to respond. We could respond with kindness or with judgment. And like Hashem, we respond with kindness. We're going to do kindness. We're going to choose to do kindness and then just take the severity and say, how could it help the kindness? How could I use my strength of character? How could I use my organization to help my kindness? But kindness is the main goal. And Yitzchok was making himself fit in with Abraham. So we like to do the same thing. We take our severity and our strengths, and we like to make it fit in with kindness. So our ultimate goal is that we always want to respond with kindness. So that's the lesson that we have. Now, it says that Yitzchok was 40 years old when he got married, and similar to his parents, Rivka was barren and she could not have children. She was infertile, and he begged Hashem. He pleaded with Hashem, and he said, "Please, please." He prayed, and Hashem granted his wish, and Rivka became pregnant. And it's a very interesting story of what happened when she became pregnant. It says that the children struggled inside of her. It was a lot of turmoil, like when someone's pregnant and the baby's kicking, but she just felt so much turmoil. And it says that when she walked past a shul, a Jewish place of prayer, she felt tremendous amount of kicking, but like as if the baby wanted to come out, like an, not natural kicking. And then when she went past the church, she also felt a crazy amount of kicking. Hi, Alessa, welcome. And so Rivka, when she was pregnant, she didn't know what was going on. She felt really, uneasy about this. Kicking is normal during pregnancy, but this was an abnormal amount of kicking. And if she came to either a Jewish place of worship or a non-Jewish place of worship, she felt this intense kicking as if the baby was trying to get out, and she didn't know what was going on. And she said, this is what I was longing for. This is what I was begging for, to become pregnant. So she went, it says, to the yeshiva where there were prophets, Shem and Aver, and she said, please help me, guide me. What is going on? There must be a deeper meaning to this. This doesn't make sense. Like, this is not just I'm having a tough pregnancy. Something is going on that's deeper than this. Could you please tell me and help me out? So Hashem gave her a message through them that you have two nations inside of you. And when they come out, they're going to be two separate nations. And ul'um mil'um ya'amatz b'rav ya'avoid tzayir, which means one kingdom will be stronger than the other. They're always going to be fighting. And the elder will serve the younger. So she was already being told when she was pregnant that she's going to have these two children, and they're going to grow up into two big nations, and they're always going to be fighting. And sure enough, she gave birth, and she had two children that had very different characteristics and personalities. She had Yaakov, that was calm, and he loved to learn. He was like that educated, calm, intellectual young boy. And then she had Esav, who he came out red and wild, and he was a hunter, and that was him. And we know that from from Yaakov came the Jewish people. His name was changed later to Yisrael, and we know that we are called Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel, and we all come from him. And Esav ended up being a hunter, a murderer, a thief, and he was not exactly following the ways. And that's why when they came to the church, he was kicking and wanted to get out. He had his, personality, and I should say his natural tendencies. And, Yaakov had his tendencies of being a very well-mannered, learned, man. So they had opposite personalities. And before I continue in the story, I just want to mention that being that Rivka is our matriarch, it's a lesson for us. So even this part of the story, that there were two different nations and that they're constantly battling with each other, this is a lesson within our own bodies. We all have a Yaakov and an Esav. Yaakov is symbolic of our neshama, of our godly inclination, our desire to want to do good. And Esav is symbolic to our animalistic soul, our animal soul that wants to act like an animal. What is an animal? An animal doesn't have a brain to think, to be idealistic. An animal is selfish, self-centered, and it is all about instant gratification. There's a famous story of the Rambam of Maimonides, and he was in a debate with another philosopher, and the Rambam was explaining that really there is an animal cannot be trained to be like a human person. And the other philosopher said, yes, you could. You could train a human being to be like you could train an animal to be like a person. So they come to this debate, and the other philosopher has a cat, and the cat is standing only on, instead of all fours, he's only standing on two. And on one of his hands, he has like a tray. He's going around with drinks, and he's wearing an apron, and everyone's clapping. Look, poor Rambam who's going to be proved wrong. This man trained this cat to be like a human, and he is going around serving like a human being. He's able to stand on 2 feet. He's able to follow directions and to go. And just a minute later, the Rambam pulls out of his bag a little mouse. And as soon as he pulled out the mouse, the cat just dropped the tray, all the glass flew everywhere, and he ran. He was on his fours now, he wasn't on his twos anymore, and he ran to get the mouse. And he said, see, you can't train an animal. Bottom line, an animal wants instant gratification. He can't think that I only gave him one mouse, but his boss, the philosopher who hired him, he actually had 10 mice for him. He had a lot more for him. And he couldn't think that, oh, my boss is being, humiliated. He's not capable. So we all have that animal inside of us, our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination that tries to tell us, it feels good, just do what feels good now. Don't think about that. It's our body wants to just enjoy the pleasures of this world. It feels better to say that juicy piece of gossip. It's easier not to be kind to that other person and invite them. It's easier just to sit and read a book than to pray, etc., etc. Why try to keep Shabbos? It's so hard. It's such a burden. So we each have the animal that just wants what I can see right now, what feels good right now, and it's self-absorbed. It can only think about itself instead of the big picture. And then we have our godly soul that is idealistic, and that is what we all have. We have these two forces inside of us kicking. When I go to the shul, my neshama is saying, come on, let me out. Let me out. Let me pray. I want to pray. I want to eat kosher food. I want to keep Shabbos. I want to be a polite person. I want to control my anger. And then when it comes to, lose your temper and speak not nicely and, be harsh, don't learn Torah, whatever it may be, you have that other one kicking and saying, come on, let me out. This feels so good. Don't you want to do this? So that's the struggle that we are faced with every day, every moment. And every time we celebrate our neshama, we win. It says they're always going to be fighting. But ultimately, we have the power to overcome our evil inclination and to live our life following our neshama. And because it says that even though they were both, fighting and, well, what's a better word? Even though both of them were struggling inside of her, it still says that, they're going to be constantly fighting, but one kingdom will always be stronger. In other words, you can't be using both at the same time. If I'm listening to my evil inclination, I'm not listening to my good inclination. I'm listening to my animal soul, I'm not listening to my godly soul. So we always have to be the strong one to serve. And it says the older will serve the younger, which the older one we know is Esav. Esav was born first. He pushed his way out to come first. And so ultimately, we have the strength that our neshama should be the ruler, the one in charge, and leading us. So now to continue the story as far as we can get today, that these two boys grew up, and Esav became a hunter, and Yaakov, it says, Ish Tam Yoshev Alim. He was a simple man, a pure man, meaning very sincere and pure, not influenced by the world. And he sat in his tent. What does it mean? He sat and learned Torah. And it says that Yitzchok loved Esav and Rivka loved Yaakov. And when it came time to bless these two children, Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav, and Rivka wanted him to bless Yaakov. And to understand this, it's, important to understand that why did they have the difference of opinion? Why weren't they on the same page? And why did they just love both of them equally? What is this? That Yaakov was loved more by his mother, Esav was loved more by his father? It doesn't, since when do we pick favorites? What's happening over here? So one explanation that I really, enjoy learning is that the women in general are more pragmatic. The Zohar explains that the woman, both Sarah and Rivka, they are symbolic of the more pragmatic, the body, seeing things in reality as they really are. And the men are more idealistic. It's more like the soul. They see the potential of what it could come to be. And that was the idea that Rivka was very pragmatic, similar to Sarah. When there was Yishmael, and Yishmael was going to be a bad influence, Ishmael, on Yitzchak, Sarah said, he's got to leave the house. He's a bad influence. And what did Avram say? What do you mean? He's great. He has so much potential. He could become so great. And what did Sarah say? I don't know what to do. I'll ask God. Let me ask Hashem. And Hashem said, whatever Sarah says, Avram, you should listen to her. And in the end, they sent Yishmael away. Why did they have a difference of opinion? Because Avram saw Yishmael has so much potential. But Sarah, being more pragmatic and practical and down to earth, she said, I see his reality. His reality is that he is not a good person. He is not reaching his potential. Theoretically, he could become a great person, but that's not what's happening. So, so that was essentially the same difference over here, that Yitzchak saw Esav's potential and that he could grow up to be, and it says he had a soul from a very high source. And if he would have reached his potential, he could have actually been much, much greater than Yaakov, but he didn't. And Rivka saw the reality. There's other explanations of, he thought, Yaakov doesn't need it. He's already like a good boy. He doesn't need this extra fortification. He doesn't need that boost. And Esav, on the other hand, needs it. But the problem is that Esav was going to misuse it. Esav was not going to use it to serve Hashem. And therefore, it was not going to go over well. And so that's essentially, the difference between what they believed. Now, on a simple level, I guess you could say, on a practical level, it says that when Yitzchak got old, he was blinded. And so he called Esav and he said, I don't know when I'm going to die. And the day of my death is coming very near. So Yitzchak, Isaac, is about to pass away. And he says, before I pass away, I want to bless my son. And so why was he suddenly thinking, hey, I don't know when I'm going to die? Because it says that 5 years before your parent passes away, you start thinking about, hey, what's going to be with me? And Yitzchok was 123 years old, and his mother passed away at 127. So he started thinking, hey, maybe I'm going to pass away. So I don't know, though. Maybe I'll pass away at a different time, maybe closer to my father's age. And he didn't know. So, anyways, he told Esav, it says that he got old and he realized, and his eyes were dimmed. And there's a few different explanations as to what that means. What does it mean? His eyes were dimmed. It says that when Esav's wives, they would serve idols and they would offer incense, and there was so much smoke that it blinded his eyes. That's one explanation. Another explanation is that when he was offered as a sacrifice by Abraham to be sacrificed to Hashem, and the malachim, the angels on high, they saw and they started to cry. And those tears went into his eyes and caused him, they dimmed his eyes. That led him to being blind. And another one is that Hashem made this happen so that he could give the brachos to Yaakov, because now that he's blind, that's how he was planning on blessing Esav. And Rivka said, no, you're going to bless Yaakov. But she didn't say to him, hey, why don't you bless him? The reason that she had to do it in a way of trickery is because Yaakov was a Gilgal. He was like a reincarnation of Adam, of the first man, Adam Arishai. And Adam was tricked by the snake, and that's how all the evil came into this world. And he was like refining and rectifying. He was continuing this work of Adam. And since the snake came in a way of trickery, it says when you deal with a sly person, you have to act sly back. In other words, they were slipped and intermeshed. All of these sparks of holiness were like hidden in this world. And so he needed to, in an indirect way, more of trickery, try to extrapolate all of these sparks. And if he was blind, then Rivka was able to get Yaakov dressed like Esav. He kept his clothes, a lot of his clothes, in her house because he didn't trust his wives, because they were idol worshippers and they weren't honest people. And so his expensive stuff he would keep with his mother. And so she had his clothing. And so she put this clothing, hunter's clothes, on Yaakov. And she took goat skin because he was very, very hairy. And when a blind person can't see, they usually touch, right? So he was going to touch the arm, and then he's going to say, this is smooth skin. It's Yaakov. So he made sure to Rivka put the very hairy skin of the goat, and she worked on it, and she, to make it feel more human, she like scrubbed it. And when he came and he felt that this was he realized, Yitzchok felt it and said, oh, Harry, this is Yitzchok. So when Rivka overheard this whole thing, that Esav was going to be blessed, she quickly got into action, and she quickly, took these goats and slaughtered them, and she made the food because Esav was going to hunt food to bring back. So she had to prepare the food quick that Yaakov could come in with this food. And she took these, kid goats, and she prepared his arms to feel hairy. And she quickly got him set up and told him to go. Now, of course, Yaakov didn't want to do this. He didn't want to trick his father into giving him the blessings. But of course, Rivka, she got prophecy from Hashem that this is what she was supposed to do. And therefore, he realized he had the mitzvah of kibbud aim of listening to his mother. And he realized that she just didn't, say this on her own. And he just said, maybe father's going to feel me and realize that it's me. And she said, don't worry. I'm going to, we're going to put the hairy goat skin on you so that you will, feel like Esav. And she said, the curse will be on me. Don't worry. I'm taking responsibility. I have confidence. Everything is, going to go well. And so that's what they did. They followed their plan, and he prepared the food, and he brought it. And he came in, and he said, who are you? And he said, Anochi, I am. And then he said, Esav is your firstborn. So he didn't lie because he said, I am, me. And then he just said, Esav is your firstborn. But because that was said together near each other, it sounded like, I am Esav, your firstborn. It really was, I am, and Esav is your firstborn. And Yitzchok came, and here's the famous words. When he came close, he said, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hand of Esav. And what did he mean by that? He said, the voice, the way that you're speaking sounds like Yaakov. Yaakov was way more refined. And he came in and he said, he says, come and please bless me. And he was talking in a very refined way. And Yitzchok said to him, oh, you went hunting so fast, because he had to make sure to come before Esav came back. So he came back early, right? Because Rivka just had the goats there. They didn't have to go hunt them. So he says, oh, you came back so fast. Wow. And Yitzchok, and what did he say? Yaakov said, Ki hikra Hashem elkecha lefanav. The eternal God arranged it for me. And that's when he said, this sounds like Yaakov. He's saying, God arranged it for me. Esav was all into, yeah, so fast I did it myself. Look at me, mighty me. But the sense of humility gave him the sense that it was Yaakov. But then he couldn't figure it out because he felt like Esav. So he said, Akol kol Yaakov vayadayim midei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. And so that's a lesson to us, that we always have to have the voice of Yaakov, meaning to speak. When we speak in a way of, in a refined way, in a way where we mention Hashem and we thank Hashem. We learned that from Abraham. He was always saying, blessed is Hashem. When we learn in this way and we recognize Hashem, that is our identity. Hakol kol Yaakov. This is the voice of Yaakov. And he ended up, blessing him. It says he came close and he smelled the smell of Gan Eden. And he only smelled Gan Eden because Yaakov was wearing this special coat that Esav stole from Nimrod, who was like a very big king. And he smelled, it says he smelled his clothes, and he blessed him, and he says, wow, it smells like the field, such a good smell. Why would he say that? It should smell like goat skin. Doesn't smell good. But Hashem made it that the smell of Gan Eden came in with Yaakov, and he ended up blessing him, and he gave tremendous blessings of, fat of the land, abundance of grain and wine. The other nations should serve you. You should be the ruler. Those who curse you shall be cursed. Those who bless you shall be blessed. And he gave him the food to eat, etc. And right then, Asaph came in, and he came in screaming, "What about me? What about me?" And he said to him, "I'm sorry, I already blessed him." He says, "You don't have any blessings left for me?" He says, "But I blessed him that Yaakov is going to be the ruler over you. And therefore, everything you have is just going to belong to him. So how's that going to work?" And he said, "I already made a master over you. So what are you gonna? If I give you grain, it's going to be his grain. What's it going to help?" So he said, "Come on, don't you have one blessing?" And he burst out crying. And Yitzchok responded, and he said, "Your dwelling place will be of the riches of the earth, where the dew falls from the heavens. But you're going to live by your sword. You're going to be always killing with your sword, and you will serve your brother." And of course, Asa wasn't happy that he got a little bracha, but ultimately, he was very, very upset that he didn't get it. But Hashem orchestrates exactly who is supposed to get what, and so this is the way it worked. And we'll end over here due to the time. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining.